Before we get started, we just want to thank Old Republic Surety for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety, as well as NASBP virtual seminars for the 5th year in a row. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com. Now on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. I've got with me today as co-host Mark McCallum, CEO of NASBP. Hey Mark, thanks for being on.
Absolutely. Hi Kat. Looking forward to a great conversation with the mover and shaker.
Me too. I am excited that we do have this premier mover and shaker in the commercial construction industry. We have Steve Sandherr, CEO of Associated General Contractors of America, who has been a leader with AGC of America for more than 3 decades. Steve, it's great to have you on with us today.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks, Mark. A pleasure to be with you.
Steve, before we dive in and talk more about your career, and could you just tell us a little bit about AGC?
Sure. AGC is the largest commercial construction association in the country. We have 27,000 member firms. We have 89 chapters throughout the country. We are a federation. We have 67 employees here in the DC metropolitan area. We like to say we represent the entire construction industry: highway contractors, building contractors, general contractors, specialty contractors, union contractors, open shop contractors. And because of the diversity of our membership, we feel obliged that it's necessary for us to engage in every issue that impacts the construction industry. And I think that we make good on that promise.
That's terrific.
So I know, Steve, you've had a long career at AGC. I was wondering if maybe you'd let us know a little bit about how you got to AGC, kind of what role you initially played, and how that evolved into your present position.
Okay, that's going to reveal my age. I went to law school. I never really had an interest in practicing law. I was more interested in public policy issues. I took a lot of labor law courses when I was in law school, so if I had a specialty, that would be it. Soon after I got out of law school, I saw an ad in the Washington Post. Yes, people used to get their jobs by answering classified ads in the newspaper. The AGC was looking for somebody with a construction law, labor law background. I had taken a course in law school called Labor Relations in the Construction Industry. I applied for the job and I got it, and that was in 1984.
Wow.
I think I got the job because they could afford me. I was paid $23,000 a year. About 2 years into my tenure here, there was a construction labor law reform bill that was being debated in Congress, and they used to take me up on the Hill to explain it because it was and I found that I enjoyed that a lot more than writing legal papers. So I moved into doing lobbying work for AGC, but then I saw basically no room for advancement, and in 1989 I left to go to a law firm, but my role there was to do lobbying work. Didn't really cotton to that too much, mainly because they didn't have enough clients to pay me. So I left there, went to the home builders and did labor stuff there, legislative work. And then in 91, I got a call saying, do you want to come back and run AGC's government relations department, which is the job I always coveted. I did. I came back in 91. And then in 97, I was promoted to CEO.
That's great.
So that's my journey.
During that time and to the present, you've been shaping a lot of policies for the benefit of the commercial construction industry. What are some of the most memorable moments in terms of policy challenges that you faced to the present?
I'd put them in some categories. One is infrastructure advancement. That's in AGC's DNA, and we've been successful over the years in working with other like-minded groups, business groups, construction groups, labor groups, in pushing the engineering groups, pushing for investment in infrastructure. And that was more or less the capstone of that was bipartisan infrastructure bill that Congress passed a few years ago, which had significant increase in infrastructure investment across the board. I'd say another bucket would be responding to regulatory overreach. We've been successful in the courts. We've been successful in working with regulatory agencies, primarily in the environmental and labor and employment and procurement areas, where we may not be 100% successful in getting the agencies to agree with us, but our approach is what can we do? How do we approach an agency and offer them alternatives that help them reach their objective, but are less costly and less burdensome on the regulated community? And we've had a lot of success in doing that. And then another bucket I would add would be the identifying and advocating on behalf of contractors and on their risk profiles. And we've done that through the Consensus Stocks program, where we've gotten most of the entities that are involved in a construction project together to work out documents that have a fair allocation of risk. I think that's one of the most successful things AGC has done, has been a leader in that effort. And then beyond that, working with organizations like yours to work for beneficial arrangements with regard to bonding and surety, or working in the courts. We have been shaping law with regards to CGL policies covering construction defects. We just had a victory in Illinois Supreme Court recently where we were able to make good law in Illinois, and that's about the 15th state over the last 12 or so years where we have been successful in state courts in making sure that insurance policies cover construction defects. I think there's many more, and some of them you may remind me of during this conversation. The one point I would make is you're giving me more credit than I deserve. We are an effective team here at AGC, and my role is to remove any obstacles that people have to be successful advocates for the construction industry. And we have a lot of smart people, subject matter experts, and the successes we've had have been in large part because of their efforts.
I love that. I think being a leader means you have to form a great team to be effective. I wanted to go back a little bit about the political climate, because everybody rightfully sees a very partisan institution in Congress. And I think you hit on a couple of very key points about AGC's willingness to work with others. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've been able to navigate the partisan environment to be very productive on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, to be honest, that environment has shifted dramatically since the time I started getting involved in lobbying. I like to say that 25 years ago, on big issues, even though you have Republicans and Democrats that are very partisan, on big issues, they would find a way to put aside differences and work for a common objective. Now the environment is, how do we make the other team look bad? And both parties are guilty of this. I think it's a sad commentary, and I think on the current state of affairs in D.C. And part of the problem is that both parties are appealing to their extremes, are captured by their extremes.
Right.
And it's hard to get people into a common sense middle, because all of a sudden, in order to compromise with the other side, they feel like they're abandoning their principles.
Yeah.
A wise man once told me that sometimes you have to rise above principle to get things done.
Steve, what's it been like? You mentioned the importance of your team. What's it been like leading a major association?
I like to say that if you're going to work for a trade association, the only job worth having is the one at the top. And I didn't really understand that until I had this job. One of the great benefits of having this job and the the 100 or so issues that we're involved in at any given time is I'm always learning. I'm always learning about issues that impact the construction industry. I'm learning from my team how to respond to those issues, how to communicate on those issues. And if you have really good, capable, smart people, that's going to make you much more effective. So I think that answers your question. And then I guess one more thing I would add to this, I've been asked, what do you like most about your job? And the answer is winning.
Yeah.
The reason you're in these policy fights is to win.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's gratifying. And it's a team celebration and a team victory. And I think it keeps me motivated, and I'm sure it keeps the people that work here motivated as well.
Right.
They're making a difference.
You mentioned how Washington has changed. How has the commercial construction industry changed over your career?
First of all, when I first started, cell phones were new technology. We didn't have any Apple phones or Droids. We didn't have any iPads. We had contractors that didn't have email addresses. Our newsletter went out by mail. Obviously, technology has played a really big role in making contractors more efficient and more productive. Secondly, the relationship between contractors and their workforce has changed dramatically. Finding people to work in construction has always been a challenge. You can go back 100 years through our board minutes, and this is always a topic on the board agenda. And when I first started in the mid-'80s with AGC, there was an old school mentality about construction craft workers and that they're there to do the job, and it's an 8-hour day, and it's between these hours, and there was, I hesitate to use this term, but it has some truth to it. Labor was somewhat of a commodity. And I think now contractors, employers in general, look at their craft workforce as professionals, as having a great impact on their ability to deliver a quality project, that there's a lot more flexibility in meeting their needs as individuals and as husbands and wives and sons and fathers and sisters, etc. And that's been very positive. And along with that, in the change in that culture has been the elevation of safety as a top priority for every construction company. That the contractors recognize that not only do they have a legal obligation, but they have a moral obligation to provide a safe workplace and to do everything they can to mitigate hazards at the workplace. And we have a National Safety Awards program, and that's one thing that AGC should really be proud of, because we are identifying and celebrating firms that have a deep, embedded safety culture, and we want to promote those firms and their practices and set them out as shining examples for the rest of the industry to emulate.
Obviously, things have changed. And I know one of the things you did mention is maybe what I call liberalization of procurement methods and project delivery methods. And I know that AGC has been very involved in that and has changed as a result. Any more thoughts on that front? Where do you see things going in the future?
Yeah, admittedly, when I first got this job, we were towards the end of being slow movers in alternative delivery systems. And I think we were justified in being reluctant to embrace design build in public construction because of the subjectivity in making an award. I think we've helped improve that system to take some of the subjectivity out of it and also to allow more firms to participate in that type of delivery system. And then beyond that, every new delivery system that comes out, we're evaluating and identifying for our members what the positive and aspects are and what are the challenges so that they can make informed decisions about whether or not to employ those various delivery systems on a given project. That obviously has been a change. And then with those changes, what tails along with that is how do you properly allocate risk in these different alternative delivery systems? And that will continue to go on as different circumstances pop up and different judicial decisions are delivered that impact a contractor one way or the other. That's part of our mission there, is to examine the landscape and identify how contractors can be successful in employing different methods of delivery.
And you touched on earlier about the ability of AGC to articulate risk positions through that collaborative process, consensus talks. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
The industry has been basically dominated by one entity's documents that were very favorable to the entity that drafts those documents. That was the industry standard, and our members started to become very critical of terms and conditions in those documents, particularly one version that restricted the contractor's ability to determine whether the owner could actually afford to pay for the project. And with practices like that, that encouraged us to reach out to others in the industry and say, there's got to be a better way to do this. And that's how Consensus Docs was formed. And in doing so, you had various constituencies. You had general contractors, you had specialty contractors, you had the bond producers, you had the surety association, you have owner groups, design folks, and everybody left their swords outside the room and went and sat down around a table and devised contracts the objective was what's in the best interest of the project, not what is in the best interest of individual associations or entities that were looking to protect their own narrow interest. And I think everybody who participated in that and developed those documents should be very proud of what they've done.
And I think they're very important risk models for pronouncements for how things should be in the industry. And certainly they're beneficial to the surety industry to make sure that there are equitable documents out there to frame these relationships. If I recall correctly, you correct me, Steve, AGC was also a pioneer in fostering building information modeling, where you had more of a dialogue around it than there was in the industry. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. That probably goes back at least 10 or 12 years, where we provided a forum for disparate interests to come together and develop protocols for the use of BIM, working with software companies, working with owner groups, working with contractors, general contractors, specialty contractors, risk managers, etc., to establish a process by which and encourage people to use a process for using BIM as a delivery system and a construction technology tool.
That's great.
Yeah, so that was, we hosted that and we supported it financially. And that group came up with a proper set of protocols for contractors to use when they implement BIM.
Yeah, and you see certainly more adoption now in the commercial construction space.
Sure.
As a current issue, or maybe it's a current opportunity, is AGC involved in shaping the dialogue around artificial intelligence in the construction context?
Yeah. We're just starting to tackle that. It's both nascent and not. There's a lot of questions out there on how to handle this. In January, we have our risk management meeting, and I am pretty sure this is a topic for discussion at the Surety Risk Management meeting at the end of January.
Well, that's great that you're providing that forum to further explore that issue.
So that's one of the challenges that's definitely facing the commercial construction space moving forward. Do you see any other major challenges that your industry is facing in the future?
The workforce issue never goes away, and that's going to continue to be a challenge. And we have about 25 different pressure points that we are activating to try to raise awareness on this. One of them is, and I think everybody in the industry ought to be aware of this and talking about it with policymakers. At the federal level, for every dollar that the federal government invests in career and technical education, they're investing $4 in higher education. And the question that we have is that is disproportionate to the amount of jobs that require a 4-year college degree. Why isn't there more of an emphasis on career and technical education where you can prepare people for solid middle-class lives by teaching them a craft or a profession, in the construction industry where that's portable, where those skills can be enhanced through additional training, and demonstrate to young people that there's a career path that you can start out in a construction craft and become a construction company owner, there are scores of examples of that within our own association where people start out as construction craft workers and decide that they're smarter than their boss and go out and create their own business.
Right.
That's the American dream and success story. And we, folks in Congress and in the administration, need to start thinking about how they can better prepare people to take on those jobs, because sooner or later your electricity doesn't work and your plumbing doesn't work, and you hope that somebody, when you call somebody, you hope that they're going to get there in an hour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I know over time AGC has done what it can to facilitate that evolution. People knowing about construction as a career to someone who wants to start their own construction business. Could you talk a little bit about some of the educational or training opportunities that AGC provides?
Yeah, we basically have training opportunities that start out at the craft level and go all the way up to the C-suite. And to your point about emerging contractors, we have a series of modules for emerging contractors to help them understand the business better and be more successful on topics like risk management, bonding, safety, finance, issues like that you could have somebody who's very skilled and knowledgeable about how to build things, but they may not be equally adept at managing and building a company. And these are tools to help them make that transition. And then, of course, we have project manager courses, safety management professional courses, our advanced management program, which is directed at C-suite employees. All of these things, supervisory training program that helps elevate craft workers up to being field foremen and superintendents. All of these opportunities are within our educational menu, and we think we're serving the entire industry by making those possible.
Yeah, pretty comprehensive. That's great. Yeah.
Steve, it's been great having you on with us today. Before we let you go, you mentioned that your favorite part of your role is winning.
Right.
So I just wanted to ask you, is there one of those successes that you're most proud of in your career?
There's many. I think, and this isn't really winning, if somebody were to put a gun to my head and say,
I promise not to do that.
Okay, you're putting me on the spot. You're putting me on the spot. As a manager and leader at AGC, the one thing I'm proudest of is when the Great Recession came in 2008 and 2009, and there was a lot of pressure on me to reduce staff because of the financial situation. I pushed back and I said, you contractors, you're letting people go because you have less work. We don't have less work. We have more work. And we're going to find a way to keep everybody on board. We didn't lay anybody off. We didn't furlough anybody. We didn't reduce anybody's pay. We kept the team intact. And that's the one thing I'm most proud of.
I think that can be called a win. I'm sure all the staff that were there consider it a win.
Yeah, I think that's a great win. So.
And probably all of your members as well. So you could carry on, keep doing the things that AGC does best.
Exactly. But you have talent. You have a talented staff, but you hate to see them leave.
Yeah, Steve, thank you so much for being with us and telling us your thoughts and your journey and all the wonderful things that AGC is doing and will do. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate the conversation.
And if anyone wants to learn more about AGC, is there a place on the web they can go?
Sure, www.agc.org.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just want to say thank you again to Old Republic Surety for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com.